So-called Black Floridians are really upset right now, and they're marching as the Florida Legislature has basically changed the curriculum for Black studies. MSNBC did a story on it, and I'm going to chime in. But before I chime in on it real quickly, I want to just say if you're a liberal Black, or if you go for some of these particular causes or anything, you may want to get off of this video right now, because I'm not going to. This is a pro-truth channel. It's not a pro-Black channel. It's definitely not a pro-liberal channel. No, it's not pro-conservative either, for that matter. I mean, I don't really believe in politics. I call it like I see it. I call it where there's inbounds or out of bounds. That's how I call it. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's get into this video real quickly. And basically, they're going to talk about this woke act that Ron DeSantis has came up with, and they're going to talk about the problem that they have with this new curriculum, and they're going to talk about the city of Ocoee, and I'm going to chime in on all of that. So let's do it. Oops, let's get it.
When this show first started a year ago, Ron DeSantis was in the middle of a successful re-election campaign for governor, but he was just beginning his war on woke. And as he extended his reach into public classrooms across Florida, transforming them into anti-woke battlegrounds, we followed, reporting on the effect of his new policies. When Governor DeSantis began...
He has a war on woke. Let me explain woke to you. Woke was not a term that the average conservative so-called white man even knew the words on or knew anything about. I'm assuming that his war on woke basically means his war on the liberal media, or these liberal groups that are out here that are trying to change everything. That's the only thing I can think about is war on woke, because woke was a term that actually was used in the 90s and the 2000s by quote unquote Pan-African, I call them Pan-African peddlers, but these were the guys that were the Back to Africa movement, celebrate your African culture, celebrate Kwanzaa instead of Christmas. Those were those type of people. And they basically were, if you were woke, that meant you knew about Africa and you celebrated all those things. You had your ties back to the motherland. So that's what woke meant back then. Woke has been changed around to mean some weird stuff now. I mean, I don't even know if I can describe what woke is, other than maybe he's talking about these liberal different organizations and what they're trying to do to what he thinks American values are.
And policing language in Florida schools. We talked with teachers attempting to plan lessons where they couldn't teach about racism if any group of students felt discomfort.
How would you know they felt discomfort? Do you ask them? I mean, how do you ask an elementary school student or a middle school student, do you feel uncomfortable? You're talking about the horrors of what you have to teach, which is racism, and what everybody has accepted, which I don't believe that racism was, like it was described or like it was narrated or taught in school, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, you teach the horrors of racism. Are you going to stop and ask the so-called Caucasian young students, are you offended by the way I'm teaching this? If you have to teach the Holocaust, are you going to talk to the little young descendants of the Germans, the little young, German white, so-called white kids? Are you going to ask them, are they offended? How would you know if a kid is offended or not? The only people that's going to get offended, sounds like to me, are the adults. That's the only people that would be offended. The kids aren't going to be offended. I don't believe, unless you make it offensive. And I can't see a teacher doing that.
When DeSantis initiated a hostile takeover of New College, a small public liberal arts school in the state, we went there and we spoke to students and parents about the new trustees and their mission to transform the school into a model of conservatism. A year later, Governor DeSantis is attempting to rescue his struggling presidential campaign by spotlighting his latest crusade against Black history.
They said he was struggling. And his campaign is struggling. I don't know if he should just drop out the race. But at the end of the day, that's not what this video is about, his struggling presidential bid. Because, Trump has been indicted about 52 times and he's still beating DeSantis. I'm sorry. Anyway, let me get off of that. I digress. But you notice what it says. It says Florida's miseducation, the new standards target Black history studies. I don't even know if you or he or anybody else would think that by him gutting or trying to talk about Black studies, does that help him in any way with a presidential campaign for the nation? It hadn't helped him so far, so maybe you ought to leave Black studies alone.
First, Florida rejected the curriculum for AP African American Studies. Then, the Board of Education approved new standards for teaching Black history, including mandating lessons on the personal benefit of slavery.
Now, let's talk about this real quickly. First of all, enslaved people. We have associated that only Black people in this country were enslaved. And actually, there were more so-called white people enslaved than there were Black people, so-called Black people. And also, we would like to think that only so-called white people were indentured servants and so-called Black people were slaves. It's not the case. So-called Black people had indentures as well as, I guess you want to call them slaves, and so-called white people had indentures and they were also slaves. And as a matter of fact, so-called Black people actually had more indentures than actual so-called white people. Facts. So the personal benefit could be from the indentures, because an indentured servitude basically meant you were an apprentice. So you were actually learning something. But now, if you want to talk about the personal benefits of a slave, I don't know about that. But even so, why would you put that in a book? How could you teach the way you teach slavery? At least that's the way it's normally been taught. That you teach the horrors of slavery, that you basically kidnapped a person from his homeland, took him across an Atlantic Ocean in a mid-Atlantic slave trade. You sold him on an auction block. You beat him. You separated him from his family. You made him work for free. But in saying all of that, it was a benefit to it. How can you say it was a benefit to it? By the way you teach it. Now, I don't believe in the narrative and the way you teach it. I know better than that. But the way you teach it to the students, you can't make it into a benefit. There's no way. And that shouldn't even been added to a textbook, to be honest. I don't know what the hell these people are thinking about in Florida.
And requiring that lessons on certain race massacres include acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans.
Yeah, you're right. If a white person came to your house in a sheet over their face and over their body, carrying torches, and you decided to take a shotgun out there and put some shotgun shells in their asses, I want to know, and I think young Black people should want to know that too. You should want to know that your so-called, so-called race, if you want to call it race, I don't believe in that concept, but if you want to say your people or the so-called Black people, the people that represent you, they fought back, I'm 100% with you, baby. Put it in the book. Let's go.
So once again, we went back to Florida, traveling to the small town of Ocoee, 12 miles west of Orlando, where the town's own history of anti-Black violence and its residents' ability to learn about it, where that is all under threat.
The Ocoee Massacre was basically like a whole bunch of Black people were killed because they wanted to vote, and the white people decided to run them out of Ocoee and kill them and burn their homes and stuff.
That's not how that happened. But you can see how that would create animosity in the classroom. Did you see how she described that? She said a whole bunch of Black people wanted to vote and a whole bunch of white people didn't want them to vote. And then the whole bunch of white people ran them out of the house and then they killed them all. Whoa, that's not how that happened. I applaud this young lady going to get additional information. I applaud her going and reading, and because if the school didn't teach it and she found that information out on her own, that's awesome. But that's not quite how that happened. So I would hope she would, maybe read a different source if she read that somewhere, because that's not quite how that happened. And that could create some animosity in the classroom if that's not quite corrected. Because at the end of the day, these so-called white people that you see walking around here, they were not slave owners. As a matter of fact, they were European peasants. Over 90, probably 95 to 98% of them were European peasants. Very few of them were slave owners, and even fewer of them owned Black slaves at that. So anyway, let's move on from that. But I applaud her.
And I know like a lot of students, they don't know about that, even though we're literally in Ocoee.
I learned about the Ocoee Massacre through Ken. Exactly. It's like we were outside talking, and she's like, "Oh yeah, did you know that there's a scholarship for Ocoee?" And I'm like, "What scholarship?" And she was like, "Oh, the Ocoee Massacre." And I'm like, "The Ocoee Massacre?"
Right.
And she was like, "Yeah, they killed all the Black people." And I'm like, "They what?"
You see how that can get misconstrued? They killed all the Black people. Misconstrued.
I did my little research on it, and I'm just like this is serious. Like, and it's crazy how like racism goes so far.
It happens everywhere. It happens everywhere.
Like it's in our face.
It's happening. We still don't know about it, which is crazy.
I wasn't taught it in school. I think it may have been mentioned in AP US history my junior year, but even if it's at a slower pace, it still needs to be taught throughout the years of school because it's important.
I like that these young black kids are actually going and getting additional information and going to libraries and training, but I don't like the fact that they are becoming a victim, right? They really are really accepting and almost venerating this victim role that they're taking. Listen to them talk.
Important. It is our history, especially as us living in Florida.
In November 1920, the small town of Ocoee was the site of the worst Election Day violence in American history. Weeks before the election, Ku Klux Klan members held rallies and sent threatening letters to white Ocoee leaders who registered black residents to vote. The Klan promised...
Well, first of all, you can't take them too seriously because they didn't even know how to spell the judge's name right. His name is Judge John M. Chaney, not Judge Jano or whatever they tried to type. They don't even know how to damn spell. That should let you know right then that they don't know what the hell they're doing. Just dummies. Dummies with white sheets on.
We shall always enjoy white supremacy in this country, and he who interferes must face the consequences.
This is Ocoee, and this is the Hallowed Ground Cemetery, which contains the bodies of at least 300 people, black people, who died during the Ocoee Massacre.
Have to call bullshit on that, sir, with much respect. They did not kill 300 people. If you kill 300 people, you should be exhuming that particular ground because at that point, you should have a lot of lawsuits. In Benjamin Crump in Florida, if Benjamin Crump is in Florida, you need to call Benjamin Crump right about now. You know, you need to have that ground exhumed. Call Benjamin Crump because you have some land rights that are in some murky waters right now. Because if these people killed everybody in that town, buried them on that ground, and they've taken over the land, you've got some murky titles is all I can say. You need to be worried about that right now, sir. If that happened.
Burned to death beyond recognition, so they were put in mass graves in this spot. And
because they were burned beyond recognition, they just put them in mass graves. So you know that doesn't make any sense. Come on. Stop it. And they were forgotten about. Okay.
The massacre was sparked by two African-American men who went to the polls to vote. It was about...
Okay, now it's about two African-American men who went to the poll to vote. See, that's what I was saying about misinformation. It wasn't a bunch of black people that went to the polls and a bunch of white people that decided they wanted to kill them and burn them out and then kill all the black people. See, it's only about two people right now, not about a whole bunch of people, at least at this point. Let's keep going.
Voting rights.
there was good reason for white men to be afraid about blacks voting because it would change the balance of power in the South.
And so Mose Norman and July Perry were refused the right to vote.
The mob comes to July Perry's home, surround his home, trying to find out what was going on and to bring him out to punish him for attempting to vote. They killed two of their numbers through friendly fire, and it gets blamed on July Perry.
Now, what if July Perry actually killed the two white people? I mean, what if he actually killed the two white people for coming on his property, trying to take him out and kill him? I mean, we've got to stop acting like that we didn't defend ourselves under the auspices that every time they came to us, we were always groveling at their feet. No, we fought back. And Mr. Perry most likely fought back. And he killed two of the members of the Klan, and that's how that went down. But of course, when you got these liberal groups putting the battery in the back of these so-called liberal black people, they can't say that. They have to say some stuff like, well, you know, it was friendly fire. And then even though it was friendly fire, then they drug him out and blamed him for it. Well, I tend to believe that man had a shotgun like all old black people did, and he shot. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, this is not a movie. Every time you, like I said, they want you to think this is a movie where basically, you know, the Klan pulls up on their horses with their torches. Come out of there, nigger. Come out of there right now. And then, you know, Rufus is in the house with Nellie Mae. Rufus, don't go out there, Nellie Mae. I gotta go out there. I gotta go out there, Nellie Mae. They calling. Just stay in the house. Keep the kids in the house. And he goes out on the porch and nigger, you were trying to vote. We're gonna teach you a lesson, nigger. And you sitting up there, no, you know, you're not gonna defend yourself. You can, oh no, sir, I was didn't try to vote, sir. I was just going up to the polls, sir, to break some water to the other white folks, sir. Oh no, shut up, nigger. We're gonna take you. Come on, that's just movies. Let that go. Let that image of black people go. It's just a movie.
There were headlines all over the country. 2 white men killed in Ocoee. Blacks rioting in Ocoee.
It remains unclear to this day who killed those 2 white men.
So far, I've only seen kill 2 whites and 6 Negroes in Florida riot. Okay.
But those headlines about the death of whites at July
2 whites killed, 3 whites wounded. So far, still a few numbers. If you look down the article, it'll tell you that 2 white men were killed and 3 whites and at least 1 Negro wounded. Far cry from 300, sir.
Perry's home, diminishing the racial terror in that black community. Those headlines would have repercussions both then and now.
He was arrested and brought into Orlando, where the Orange County Jail is. The mob followed him and took him out of the jail and hung him and left his body hanging for days as intimidation, so that other African Americans who would contemplate voting in Orange County would see what would happen.
Was his family paid for this? I mean, this happened in 1920. Was his family compensated for this? Because it sounds like there was no judge, there was no jury. He was somehow taken out of the jail. Where was any of the law enforcement? Were they involved in this? Was the city of Orlando involved? Was the state of Florida involved in this? And then they left his body hanging for days in the city and nobody took a picture of it. His family didn't. I mean, you know, it just sounds weird. That story sounds real weird. So it almost sounds like folklore.
And a lot of what the Klan was trying to do, the KKK was trying to do, was to suppress the vote by using violence. And normally it worked. It worked pretty well here.
The black death toll from that day is now incalculable.
What do you mean it's incalculable? 2 whites and 6 blacks were killed during the rioting, sitting right there in that article. I haven't seen anything over 10. What are you talking about is incalculable? See, that's what they do. They put stuff out there and make you think that it's more than what it is, and it's this and it's that. It's not even true. It's not even true.
The remaining black population in Ocoee plummeted after the massacre, and the events of November 1920 were largely forgotten until...
How could you forget that? How could you forget if you had a mass grave of 300 people and you burned out a whole city and people left? So you mean to tell me that their descendants wouldn't when all of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, when you could have gotten rights, when black people had rights, you didn't go back to Ocoee and say, hey, my ancestors were killed here. This was our land. It was stolen from us. Come on. Knock it off.
Now.
Since I've been governor, we've added to what type of African-American history has been taught. For example, we have mandatory instruction on the Election Day riots, the Ocoee Election Day riots in 1920.
Act like you want a cookie, don't he?
The new curriculum in Florida schools, championed by Governor Ron DeSantis, mandates that students learn about what happened in Ocoee, but only if that instruction includes acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans.
I don't know about the acts of violence, but if acts of retaliation, I don't know about. But if you could, like I said, but acts of defense, yeah, I think that should be in every history book. Because I don't think black people should be made to look like that we didn't defend ourselves against an onslaught or terror of so-called white people. We defended ourselves. We need be. We weren't just sitting there running and crying whenever they came around.
It's an apparent reference to the 2 white men killed at Perry's home and it obscures the fact that the massacre targeted black citizens.
Nobody didn't say it didn't target black people. If you come to someone's house in a robe, white sheet, and a torch, you targeted them. But when they pulled a shotgun out and shot your ass, then you got what you got. You got what you had coming. Both should be in the history books. You know, you want to know that the so-called black man was not a doormat, that he defended himself against the terror of the so-called white man that you've made out to be this person that just ran roughshod over people.
There have been comments about the depth and breadth of these standards. Anyone who can read these standards, you can see the topics that are covered are in depth, and there's nothing that is left out.
The state of Florida and DeSantis today is officially blaming anti-white violence on blacks in Ocoee, and it did not happen. It's a lie. The 2 white men who died here died at the hands of other white people.
You know, that's a disservice to. I mean, I know that the older brother means well, and with all due respect, that's denigrating to black people when you say they didn't fight back and they just sat there and under the face of all the violence that they faced, that they didn't even defend themselves. That it had the only way that white people could have been killed in this instance was not by the hands of black people that were defending themselves, only by their own hand. And then even once they killed someone by their own hand, they still blamed it on you, drug you out, took you out, shot you up, and killed you. That makes no damn sense. Absolutely no sense.
So we're here to try to correct that lie?
If you take a massacre where a whole town was destroyed, houses were set afire, schools were set afire, Masonic lodges, churches, people who ran out of their homes were shot and killed. And those who didn't run out of their homes burned in the building. And if you can take something like that and have it focused on violence perpetrated by and against African Americans, you miss the whole point.
Good morning.
Geraldine Thompson worked in the Florida education system for more than 24 years before she became a state senator representing Ocoee.
I'd like to welcome you and thank you for your participation in this Speak Out Town Hall meeting.
Thompson is now involving the entire community to correct the state's history standards.
I want boxes of petitions that we're going to send the Commissioner of Education, saying that we want factual, balanced history taught in our classrooms.
I want it factual and balanced too. I want you to teach that they, came to this man's house and this man shot a couple of them. Don't you want to teach that? Don't you want to teach that y'all defended, that black people, or that so-called black people defended themselves? I do. I'd like to know that. I think it would make a high school kid stick his chest out. I know it would make me stick my chest out.
I love the students. Every day I come to school, I come to work, I'm excited to talk to the kids. I'm excited to tell them what they need to know so that they can grow and make this country better. But they want me to lie to kids. They want us to ignore African history prior to the slave trade.
There's no such thing as African history before the slave trade, sir. I don't know who teaches African history before the slave trade. We don't even have any African history before the slave trade. Oh, geez. These teachers are something else. That's one of those Pan-African guys. He's trying to appeal to your Pan-Africanism.
They want us to try to hide Florida's ugly legislative history. And I'm sorry, I'm getting upset.
No, you're not getting upset. You got lost. I do it all the time with these YouTubes. Don't worry about it. Just keep going, brother.
I will not, in my classroom, both sides lynchings. It's not gonna happen.
What do you mean both sides lynchings? Oh, God. Nobody's asking you to teach that white people lynch black people. You know what I'm saying? I mean that black people lynch white people and white people lynch black people. You should only teach what actually happened. If so-called black people lynch white people, which I don't know of any case of it. Maybe there are some cases. I've never heard of it. Then you should teach it. But if they didn't do it, then you should only teach the way it happened. But if a so-called black person took a weapon and defended himself and shot a couple of Klan members, you need to say it just like it happened, sir.
While teachers in Ocoee and across Florida are struggling to teach students under these new standards, Professor Marvin Dunn is showing educators Ocoee's history firsthand.
I am here because I wanted to bring Dade County teachers, active teachers, to these places in Florida where the state requires them to tell lies to students, like there was anti-white violence in Ocoee. So we're trying to correct the record and not have our teachers feel that they have to teach a lie because the state requires it. Could someone tell me what's wrong with this marker?
I can tell you what's wrong. It says African Americans. No such thing. That's a misnomer. There's no such thing as an African American. That's the first thing wrong, but I'll let them tell you, I guess, what else is wrong.
The problem with this marker is that it doesn't tell the truth of what happened here. It doesn't tell the truth of who's out there. This is hallowed ground. Calling itself a cemetery. This is not a cemetery. This is a mass grave.
You called it a cemetery earlier, sir. Well, I guess it's a mass grave now. Well, you should have them dig up that mass grave and find the descendants, so you can get that. So these descendants can get the land rights back. And if they don't want the land rights, they need to get paid for it. But if that's a mass grave, we need a mass exhumption. Exhumation. Man, I'm making up words.
This is a mass grave. We'll take questions, comments, reactions, anything from anybody.
Yeah, I'm a teacher at Miami Palmetto, at Miami, Florida, at Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and I'm telling all teachers, as you know, I wasn't hired to teach lies, and I will never teach lies. I am not a teacher who will teach lies.
Well, you better go get you a job at the post office or FedEx, because that's what school is, especially history. Nothing but a bunch of lies, but whatever.
Period.
As for the students now back in school in Ocoee, they are determined to learn the truth about what happened in their own backyard, regardless of what the state of Florida says.
Even if our history is not being taught in schools, I feel like it's our obligation to read about our history on our own.
Good job, sister. I'm glad you feel that way. And like I say, I applaud you going out there, young sister, and learning your history. I want you to just think about it a little bit more. I want you kids, if you're going to listen to my voice on this particular video, there's nothing wrong with going out there and learning. But use some common sense. Don't just read what people say and just take it for face value. Read more. Don't let somebody read and interpret something to you. Over 300 people and you go with that. If every paper says 6 people, 8 people, 10 people, question the number 300. Question some things. Don't just listen to it at face value. But I applaud you going out and getting extra additional information.
We have to do what our teachers are unable to do. Our public school teachers who are being prohibited from teaching us what is real by law. Their jobs are at stake. They're risking their livelihood.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. You can't pick and choose which ones you want and paint it. Oh, history was beautiful. We helped the slaves. We did this. We're such glamorous people.
Now, did you hear that? She said, we helped the slaves. We're such glamorous people. And what I told you, people, what did I tell you? I told you that basically you are teaching, in a sense, those kids to be second-class citizens. When you teach certain things, you're saying basically, and listen to what she said. She said, you're teaching history like it was this and like it was that, and like, oh, we did so much for you people and we helped you, but that's not the case. No, that was never the case. You shouldn't even feel that way about history. You shouldn't even feel that way about history, but that's how she feels. Let me rewind that. I want you to hear the whole. Oh, yes. What the hell? I want you to hear the whole thing here.
Yeah, I'm a teacher at Miami Palmetto, at Miami, Florida, at Miami-Dade County Public Schools.
I'm sorry.
Now back in school in Ocoee, they are determined to learn the truth about what happened in their own backyard, regardless of what the state of Florida says.
Even if our history is not being taught in schools, I feel like it's our obligation to read about our history on our own.
We have to do what our teachers are unable to do, our public school teachers who are being prohibited from teaching us what is real by law. Their jobs are at stake. They're risking their livelihood.
Right.
Exactly.
Right, you can't pick and choose which ones you want and paint it. Oh, history was beautiful. We helped the slaves. We did this. We're such glamorous people. No, you killed people. You massacred people. You took people from their homes, and that's like that. That's the hard truth. Like, it hurt.
Who is she talking to? You notice it's like she's talking to somebody. It's like she's talking to those old people that lived in Ocoee in 1920 on the porch. She said, you hurt people. You kill people. Are you talking to people in your classroom that are your age? They didn't do any of the stuff that you're talking about.
Like, it hurts. It really does. Because, again, people still have wounds. Like the Ocoee Massacre, you have the great-grandchildren surviving, recalling the times of, like, it's trauma, but...
Yeah, the great-grandkids recalling. It's trauma. How is it trauma? You didn't even know about it until your friend told you about it. So how can that now be trauma to you? It's trauma because somebody told you it was trauma. That's why it's trauma to you.
We have to heal as a nation, but we can't heal as a nation if there's...
We don't know.
Right.
And if you don't acknowledge the past, the history is gonna keep on repeating itself. So we have to stop now.
Did you hear that? If you don't acknowledge the past, history is going to continue to repeat itself. Well, who do you want to acknowledge it? I mean, DeSantis and the Florida Legislature, they acknowledged it by forcing you, I guess, to learn about Ocoee. So who else do you want to acknowledge? Do you want the students that are your age to acknowledge it? Do you want them to apologize? Just what do you want? That's why I always say and she's a baby. She doesn't know any better, but she's got a lot of her rhetoric from a lot of those liberal groups. And they want to use empty words like, I want you to acknowledge that, slavery. I want you to acknowledge systematic oppression. Who do you want to acknowledge it? Who? You want the kids in her class to acknowledge it? Who? But anyway, I've ranted enough about that. What do you think about it? What are your thoughts? Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, who knows? Maybe you believe in it. You think that I'm wrong for my stance on it. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, share. I'm out.
Happy holidays. Merry New Year. Y'all have a great day. It's a great feeling to be back.